All right, peoples. So we're live, and you can see the title. I want to talk about this because there have been in history a number of boxers, a number of fighters who actually got to face reputable names in boxing, and they themselves never really did much, you know, as other boxers did to get those fights. I will talk about a couple of them. So I'm gonna start off with I'm gonna talk about two of them. Hold on, let me just start off with recently Brian Adams. He got to face Jamal Charlo. Of course, Jamal Charlo is the interim WBC world champion now. But Brian Adams wasn't his mandatory in any way, shape, or form. And Triple G would have actually gotten Brian Adams to face him, but somehow it was a sweeter deal with Jamal Charlo. And that's a pretty big name in boxing, so you can believe that Brian Adams got a pretty decent paycheck, which is why he was smiling all the way from the beginning to the ending of the fight. All right? And for just about anyone would realize that Brian Adams is not on the level of Jamal Charlo. It's just not. Now, let me start off by going through a couple of them. I'm wondering if I've got internet though. Oh, let's see. Hopefully I do. No. Seems I have to log in to that. So I'm using this phone here, and unfortunately for me, my internet access can only happen if this phone that I'm actually shooting on is a hotspot. So I'm just gonna mention the people who, or you know what, I can pause this feed. So I'm gonna pause the feed, and I'm gonna do that right now. Sort that. All right, man. So we're talking about these fighters who get opponents ahead of other fighters, So let me start off with one of the more recent ones. And one of the more recent ones we saw was Brian Adams pairing up against Jamal Charlo. All right. And Brian Adams in the WBC wasn't top ranked. Okay. Jamal Charlo was supposed to actually face, if he had to face somebody, would be Gennady Golovkin or some other top middleweight. Okay. You have guys like Billy Joe Saunders. You got Selecki. You got Derevyanchenko. All of these guys, are much more top tier guys. Of course, you got you had another world champion who I listened to, Jamal Charlo. Once Demetrius Andre's name was brought up, Charlo started, obfuscating. He wanted to talk about Triple G, and he wants to talk about Canelo, who are both in the zone. But all of a sudden, Demetrius Andre is on the other side of the pond. No disrespect. I just listened to his tone when Demetrius Andre is brought up, how he changed his tone for whatever reason. He changed his tone. It's my right eye. Still bigger than my right eye. It's kind of weird. My left eye is still bigger than my right eye. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. And then, of course, you got some more top-tier heavyweights, much better, much higher class heavyweights than Brian Adams, who won the Contender. Great, but you ain't facing nobody. You know what I mean? So anyway, Brian Adams was the most recent example, and some of these guys continue to get these big fights. But let me go this way. So I'm gonna pull them up one by one. Let me start off with Josecito Lopez. So Josecito Lopez has pretty much gotten some of the top tier creme de la creme boxers in the sport of boxing. Let me tell you the kind of guys Josecito Lopez has actually faced. And it's just amazing that this guy got all those fights. Because there are much better competition that these guys could have faced in their weight classes than Josecito Lopez. So Josecito Lopez, all right, back in 2012, he faced Victor Ortiz, and this was for the WBC title, which Victor Ortiz had lost to Floyd Mayweather. So this was a kind of like a interim belt to get to a contender status to face Floyd Mayweather, right? The WBC title. Because what happened was Victor Ortiz was WBC champion until he faced Floyd Mayweather and he lost it. Alright, cool. Now, Josecito Lopez, who nobody thought was going to win the fight, made a great fight of it. Victor Ortiz dropped him and all that and came back, broke Victor Ortiz's jaw. Victor Ortiz couldn't continue. And from that point, Josecito Lopez, the Riverside Rocky, all of a sudden, he got his whole career changed after that. And he got fights he probably should never have gotten. Ahead of guys who were much more deserving, but just never got the fights. So, after he beat Victor Ortiz, he went up to super welterweight and faced the legendary Saul Canelo Alvarez, who is, I argue, pound for pound #1 in the world right now, and is the pay-per-view king of boxing. He's the face of boxing right now. He faced Saul Canelo Alvarez for the WBC super welterweight title. So he became a contender against Saul Canelo Alvarez for his title. And he put up, again, Josecito Lopez. One thing about Josecito Lopez, he ain't going to give you no boring fight, right? And he can box. So he throws good punches. He gets into spaces. He lands some shots. But against Saul Canelo Alvarez, he was stopped in the 5th round. Okay, this was in 2012, the same year that he beat Victor Ortiz. Okay. Yeah. Same year, 3 months after. Got his big fight with Saul Canelo Alvarez. So he got one big, humongous payday. Now, mind you, Saul Canelo Alvarez was WBC super welterweight champion at the time. He could have faced a number of much more deserving fighters in the super welterweight division. He chose to face a guy who jumped up from he jumped up from welterweight, which was Josecito Lopez, jumped up from welterweight to face him. So I'm just saying, this dude got an opponent he should have probably never gotten. Ahead of guys who were more deserving of that opponent by miles. Okay? By miles. Anyway, let's keep it moving. So, after that, he had a fight for the WB Intercontinental Welterweight title against Marcos El Chino Maidana, who later went on to become the WBA Welterweight champion. So he faced Marcos Maidana, and Marcos Maidana stopped him in the 6th round. This guy's got knocked out twice. Okay? Hold on a second, though. I gotta go. Now, here's the interesting thing. Before he even faced Victor Ortiz, he faced a up-and-coming fighter who's now 2-time world champion, etc., in Jesse Vargas. So he faced Jesse Vargas. And Jesse Vargas dusted him, right? Beat him. And the important point is, did he beat him completely or what? It was a split decision win. All right, so it was a close fight. So, but the point is, Josecito Lopez lost to Jesse Vargas. Right? It was a good competitive fight. I think he was kind of the bigger, stronger guy it looked like, and Jesse Vargas, especially down the stretch, but Jesse Vargas sucked it up, kept on fighting him. I remember that fight. But the point is, this dude faced in 2000 and what was it? Where was that? Hold on a second. In 2011 to 2013, this guy faced big names only. Jesse Vargas, Victor Ortiz, Saul Canelo Alvarez, and Marcos El Chino Maidana. This dude faced those guys. Right? He only had big fights. from 2011 to 2013. All right. He then went on to face in 2015. It was a couple years after. He didn't get much big fights after 2013. He went on to face Andre Berto. It was a big fight, but not a big fight. He still copped a payday. This is after losing to Saul Canelo Alvarez, after losing to Marcos Echino Maidana. He went on to get, and he was stopped by both. He went to get stopped by Andre Berto. All right. And yet this guy gets a deserving fight for some reason against Keith one-time Thurman in 2019. All right. Josecito Lopez. There are much better opponents that could have faced Keith Thurman. And the guys willing to face him. Sean Porter was willing to face him. Errol Spence was willing to face him. Terrence Crawford was willing to face him. Then you had Berto willing to face him. Berto's much better, fighter than Josecito Lopez. He can get stopped at least, not early. Of course, Berto is in the training camp of Keith Thurman, so he probably wouldn't have faced Berto. But then you got a bunch of other fighters out there that could have faced him. Nope. Josecito Lopez ended up facing Keith Thurman. Right? Got dropped in early. I think it was the first round, second round. I can't remember which one. All right. Hold on a second. I'm going to take a little break before I come back to you guys. 1 second. Right. Right. So, yeah, he was able to get all these fights with all these. So he has a resume that's really ridiculous. He got the best boxer in the world. He faced him. Right. And resume does matter in boxing, And this guy, he got all these major names in boxing, Josecito Lopez. And I remember some people saying, man, might as well just be like Josecito Lopez. Now, he fights. He gives exciting fights. Don't get me wrong. But the dude, he got stopped. A number of times. Okay? So, this dude ends up facing Keith Thurman. Okay? Keith Thurman. Who is, technically he's the number one welterweight in the world still. Alright? Then he faced also Andre Berto. Andre Berto wasn't a top guy anymore, but his name. He also faced Marcos Echino Maidana before he became WBA World Welterweight Champion. He had been formerly the WBA, I believe, WBA Junior Welterweight Champion. So he faced him. He also faced Saul Canelo Alvarez, who now is pound for pound number one in the world, I argue, and he is the pay-per-view king and the face of boxing. He faced Victor Ortiz, and he also faced Jesse Vargas. That's an amazing amount of top-tier guys. Jesse Vargas, two-time boxing world champion in 2 different weight classes. So when you look at that, these are some serious names that this guy faced. He didn't get any wins over them. He lost to almost every single one except for Victor Ortiz, where he got the upset. And the question is, in boxing, is your career determined by the wins or losses you have, Not necessarily. You can get huge paychecks if you're an exciting fighter. That's what they keep on saying over and over again. And in the case of Josecito Lopez, his story basically proves that point. You know? His story proves that point. But I got more. So let's look at some more. Willie Monroe Jr. Now, Willie Monroe Jr. is a guy who is an okay fighter. Now, he doesn't have a lot of losses on his record. He only has 3 losses on his record. He's only been knocked out once. So he has a decent record. But when you look at the guys he faced in the sport of boxing so far, and the guys who should have faced those guys, you wonder why he got the opportunities. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, Willie Monroe faced Darnell Boone back in 2011 and got stopped by him. No, sorry. Darnell Boone got a split decision win over him. So he lost to him. So he got lost in his career. He went on to redeem himself, beat a number of nobodies, people who we don't really know much about. And he faced up with a guy named Brandon Adams, who we all know just lost to Jamal Charlo. And he then went on to face Brian Vera, a guy who had faced Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And he was able to get a decision over him. And that gave him the NABA middleweight title. He was in an ESPN tournament. He was able to beat Brian Vera. And because of that, he was able to face Gennady Golovkin, who was, at the time, the #1 middleweight in the world. Now, how do you go from winning a tournament to facing the #1 fighter in the world when that tournament is not for legitimate professional boxers who are ranked? It's not like the Super 6 series, for example, where your world champions are facing world champions. No, this is like rejects, guys who just never got a break. They get a break through this tournament. So they're not facing legitimate contention or people in sanctioning bodies, legitimate guys. Now, you beat Brian Vera, who was an okay middleweight fighter. There were guys much more higher ranked at the time than Brian Vera. And Brian Vera was on a downslope. He had gone in BKB, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like somebody winning BKB and then going and facing, I don't know, Deontay Wilder or something like that, and they're heavyweights. It just doesn't make no sense, right? It's a tournament, but it's not a tournament within the sanctioning bodies kind of thing. All right. So anyway, he goes on to lose to Triple G, gets stopped in the 6th round, and he goes on to face John Thompson, who was another guy who was in that tournament that I was talking about. John Thompson, who had already gotten knocked out once or twice. I can't remember which one. And went on to beat him. Then he faced Gabe Rosado. Remember I told you Gabe Rosado's another one. He had a win over Gabe Rosado. And because he beat Gabe Rosado, he was able to set up a fight with Billy Joe Saunders, the WBO middleweight champion of the world at the time. Now, Billy Joe Saunders could have faced a much more deserving opponent, but he ended up facing Willie Monroe, and he dusted him. Really easy, right? So it was easy work. And after that, he has gone on since then to face mostly guys who, again, don't have no business being at the elite position in boxing. His most recent guy was Hugo Santana Jr., who's been stopped by Jamal Charlo, and he's lost to somebody else. I can't remember who. My point being, this guy was able to face Billy Joe Saunders, Gennady Golovkin. These are top tier guys now, okay? And ahead of guys more deserving of facing these guys. This is the most important point. All right? Let's go on to another person. The last person is Gabriel Rosado. Again, he's kind of like a Josecito Lopez of the middleweight and super welterweight division. All right? He fights to the bloody end. And so he gets fights. He wasn't getting fights all the time, but he gets fights. His most recent guy that he faced, he lost to, which was Maciej Sulecki. And to his credit, he really looked like if it was a little bit longer, he would have knocked out Sulecki. Didn't knock him out, but it looked like that. And Sulecki was dominating the majority of the fight. 10 rounds of the fight, he dominated. Knocked down Gabe Rosado. Knocked him down again. Looked like he was going to stop him, and then Gabe Rosado got him. I heard him. I put him down twice. I think in the 11th. Then he was coming for him in the 12th. Sulecki, to his credit, had good defense, and that's what saved him. But, yeah. Anyway. Sulecki beat him. He got a draw with Luis Arias, who's an experienced boxer. He beat Glenn Tapia, stopping him. But Glenn Tapia's been like a ping pong ball and doesn't have no defense. He lost to Martin Murray. And this is an old Martin Murray. He lost to him. All right? Martin Murray's not even near the top condition he used to be in. He lost to Willie Monroe. All right? He lost to David Lemieux. In fact, he was knocked out by David Lemieux. He lost to Jermell Charlo. He lost to Peter Quillin. He lost to Gennady Golovkin. All right, so these are all the top tier guys this guy faced. And he kept on getting shot after shot after shot. Golovkin was the first one. And he lost to him. He went on to face Peter Quillin after that. He got Peter Quillin fight. Because of the Golovkin fight, he got Peter Quillin fight. He lost to him. He went on to get the Jermall Charlo fight. He lost to him. This guy's keep on getting names in the sport of boxing. He got a David Lemieux fight. He lost to him. All right? And that's pretty much it. I'm going to call Willie Monroe's name. You know, I wouldn't even call Martin Murray's name because Martin Murray was over the hill. You know, the most recent one was Sulecki. He did put a good showing to him, but he still lost to him. These guys continuously lost fights. All right? Gabe Rosado's record was 24-12-1. They continuously lost fights, and yet they continue to get the big fights. They continue to get paid. And they would say, oh, well, Gabe Rosado, he came up the hard way, and, you know, they wasn't giving him no breaks. My point is, they're much more deserving people than Gabe Rosado who could have faced these guys. And we all know this. But people picked Gabe Rosado because he brings entertainment. And he will fight to the bloody end until he's stopped. You know what I'm saying? And that's what people really wanted Gabe Rosado for. That's why they had him matched up. So all of this just to say that it's not always the most deserving fighter that gets the fight in boxing. Sometimes it is about styles make fight. It's about matching up a fighter who is exciting and puts it all out on the line. And so they give them the fights, the big fights, the money-making fights. These guys get it ahead of much more deserving fighters. Josecito Lopez got it ahead of guys like Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, Erislandy Lara. I mean, Canelo eventually faced Erislandy Lara, but my point is he got ahead of these guys. All right? And Canelo was WBC world champion already. Even ahead of Austin Trout, because Canelo hadn't faced Austin Trout yet. So, sometimes it pays to just be exciting and be known. Maybe you pull up one upset in the whole of your career, and that was enough to make you a name and make people want to come back and see you. Even though you ain't winning shit. Josecito Lopez never won a championship. Okay? Never. Right? Brian Adams hasn't won a championship. Willie Monroe hasn't won no championship. The other one, Gabe Rosado hasn't won no championship. Right? They're okay fighters, but they're really gatekeepers. They're really journeymen, but people just don't realize that because they bring excitement. So, I want to talk about that in the sport of boxing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See, not many of you guys have said anything in the chat section, which is interesting to me, but that's okay. You guys have a good one. Deuces. I'm out. Peace.